Apocalypse and Darkseid coming down for just to trade hands with, I guess, Superman and Wonder Woman one last time before everything goes, which I thought was really funny. As far as it's just kind of petty for a big bad to like, you know what, everything's going to end. I'm going to leave all you dudes here that, you know, are my henchmen and my children. And like, I'm not going to fight this thing. I'm going to go seek out Earth again. And just one last, just for old time's sake, to mess with things there. And I like that about Darkseid on this one. I thought it was fun.
Yeah, it seemed like initially just seems kind of disjointed, but when you can't like when I read a bit more about Darkseid, I'd also got that like it's very petty, but I also really enjoyed this is I think they called it the Undoing or something.
The
Like
Undoing.
it has that very like Lovecraftian eldritch cosmic horror kind of thing, which I totally didn't expect from what's essentially a Superman comic or a superhero comic. Which I think that was an interesting element to it.
Yeah, adding a little cosmic horror layer on it was fun. Especially it was kind of this slow creeping, like it's going to come. It's just a matter of when it takes over.
Yeah, that inevitability of everything that was interesting. It's such a different thing from, like, of course, horror kind of manga it's a thing, but I feel it's sort of similar with Western comics where like adding that kind of otherworldly horror element in something that isn't horror is really rare, and I think they executed that really well. Like the feeling of inevitability and then the like emptiness of everything when Wonder Woman is just flying through the cosmos and there is nothing. Like that was really cool.
Yeah, really cool. You know, we get into that second issue and it's she's just flying through the void, trying to find life. You know, Darkseid and Superman have had their final, you know, they hugged it out to end it off and went into the sun and it blew up and takes them both out. And then Wonder Woman is conceivably alone and just floating through the void. And I really enjoyed it, especially how you said kind of that very, very much that Lovecraft element kind of snuck in there. And watching Diana have to try to keep hope alive and to keep a reason to fight alive, even though there is an inevitable ending to what is coming, which I thought was a cool kind of the through feelings, the through plot of a lot of it, which was neat. Like you said, it doesn't happen a lot whenever you throw horror into non-horror things. It doesn't always stick, but I do agree. I think it was executed pretty well in this one.
Yeah, that was like I especially like the fact like when it goes like everything dies and they even the stars vanish and then it's slowly from one panel to the next. There are moments where there's like a star in the background and then it's suddenly nothing, and it just conveys very well, I think, in this one.
Yeah. And, you know, the issue ends, the series ends, I guess, the run ends as Wonder Woman finds the Spectre floating out in space. And for comic fans, the Spectre is very much, you know, I don't want to call him the spirit of vengeance because that's Ghost Rider's thing, but kind of the same thing. You know, he's out for atonement. He's out for vengeance. He's this, you know, universally strong character, and Wonder Woman finds him, and he's kind of a broken man there, just hanging out and like, you know, I knew somebody else was alive out there. I didn't know who it was. I'm glad to see you one more time. I'm glad to kind of feel your light, feel the hope coming off of you one more time, but it's time for me to go. And then leaves, you know, Diana completely alone as the Undoing closes in, and we get our final, we can call it a fight scene, but it was more of a struggle than anything because of that inevitability, that creeping inevitability through this whole thing.
Yeah, there's something like very total about it, but there is still like I like the last moment where she goes that she will still fight back, and it is that little spark of light in the empty darkness when she's already being swallowed by the Undoing. That was, I'm not sure like what it really made me feel like, but it was kind of like that human struggle of we're all gonna die someday, but might as well go out with a bang or something. It was a very profound kind of feeling. I'm not sure if that's the intended way of it conveying feelings to me, but that's kind of what I felt like.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that, you know, that drives right up there with that Lovecraft, you know, horror element to it, as far as, you know, the life's finite and it's scary because one time everything ends, whether it's whether it's Cthulhu or whether it's this creeping tentacled Undoing. And yeah, I agree. I thought the ending was it gave you some feels a little bit, which I wasn't expecting.
it was a very profound kind of ending with the whole thing, like what is a god when there is no one to worship them, and that all that talk before the end, like that was very surprisingly deep. Like I'm not sure if this is like, I'm again not familiar with DC, but I don't think this is very common in DC, like this kind of really big, profound thinkings and feelings kind of thing.
Not a lot of times, American comics, their characters, they're very much gods among people. So
Yeah,
to kind of deconstruct that in this, as far as like what is Wonder Woman now? Is she a god? If there, like you said, if there are no people, like what is the purpose? What does she do now other than do kind of one of her core, character things is, she's a warrior, and she fights to the end, and it was good to see that play out in a different context
yeah,
than, there's a big bad, we punch him a few times and he goes away. So
yeah. Like my sense for American comics was very much the like old school Spider-Man, Batman kind of thing. There's a fight, we fight it out, the bad guy goes into jail, and everyone's happy. And this was very different.
yeah. And from the manga I read, I don't have a lot of good parallels as far as between this and that. There is always the shonen protag, of
Oh
like,
yeah,
we
yeah,
keep hope alive, and we have to keep fighting till the end and all that. But very
yeah,
few times does it actually end that way. It never ends
yeah.
bleak.
There are. I could think this would be like more close to something like seinen, which is more directed
Absolutely.
towards adults, where bad things do happen.
Yes.
And I mean, it's still like manga also tends not to go to the finite ending of everything. There is always that spark of light, even if it's a darker series. Someone always gets out,
Yeah.
which I think makes this very unique. This was more leaning to the way of the 40k stuff I read, which very often ends with the inevitable death of a planet and everybody dies and nobody's happy. Like this was more close to that kind of stuff.